I have spent decades of my career looking at pictures of murdered people. When I was trying homicide cases for 6 straight years as an assistant prosecutor, I would spend hours thinking about the victim whose case I was getting ready to try, wondering how they spent their last weeks, their last days, their last hours, and their last minutes of their lives. What were they thinking about? Did they know that the end was near? And if it was someone they knew, what must they have been thinking as they were shot, stabbed, or whatever mechanism of death was used and confronted them with by the person they knew or loved? I can't imagine the thoughts that go through their minds. But it's always, always 1,000 times worse when the person is a child or a baby, someone in the dawn of their lives who haven't begun to live their lives. The picture behind me is of Ziyah, and that will always be haunting because it was taken just a short time before the evidence shows that she was never seen or heard from again. It was taken by Ziyah herself, a selfie. That's the last known picture that we know about of her. And it was pointed out to me by one of the detectives on this case and by one of the prosecutors. She is smiling, waving, saying hello. But little did she know that she was really saying goodbye. We will provide to you later a very skeleton timeline of the time right before her death, before and after. Of course, the detail would be provided in court. The evidence shows overwhelmingly in this case that she is in fact deceased. The last time she was seen alive was January the 9th of this year, 2024, almost 9 months ago. Her missing status was reported to the Detroit Public School Police Department by her grandmother on that very day when she never returned home from school. And again, that was January the 9th of 2024. In early February of 2024, the case was turned over to the Detroit Police Department. Frankly, that should have happened right away. But they began investigating immediately. The evidence would further show that through text messages that we know and that we have, Ziyah and this defendant were going to meet after school on January the 9th. We know that she did indeed meet up with the defendant that we're charging in this case. We also know that several people close to Mr. Butts, who we were charging later, saw them together in several different locations, people that he knew well. We have evidence that at 9:30 p.m. on that day, that Mr. Butts checked into a motel and that Ziyah was never seen or heard from again. Not from her family, not from her schoolmates, not from her friends, not from social media where she was extremely active with her friends, not from teachers, no one. We know that she had no medical conditions that would cause a life-threatening medical emergency to her. And he, again, was the last person that saw her alive. She would have turned 14 years old just 10 days ago on September the 16th of 2024. And again, no one has seen or heard from her. You look at that face, and you do not see the horrors that she had gone through in her short life. The exploitation, the molestations, the sexual abuse, and the pregnancy that she was concealing. The evidence will show that from one of her text messages to and with Jarvis Butts. And we also know, the evidence will show, that there's no evidence of anyone else being the father of that child, other than the defendant himself, who we charge today. And he knew she was pregnant. We know that he was also searching for ways to abort the baby. We know that sexually explicit photos were requested by him of her, and that she complied and sent them to her. All at the hands, we allege, the man we are charging with her death and also her long-term sexual abuse. In our warrant review process that Matt and Tina and others put together, excellent work on that. Video of 111 gigabytes, witnesses and witness statements, body-worn camera, and let me not forget, it was Tina and Matt's memo, but the work of the Detroit Police Department. Anyway, we reviewed 111 gigabytes of video, witnesses and witness statements, body-worn camera footage, surveillance video, police reports, documents, 19 gigabytes, medical records, search warrant returns, phone extractions, which came to 506 gigabytes. Today we are charging Jarvis Butts with 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, and 1 count of child sexually abusive material. Today we are also charging Mr. Butts with more counts of criminal sexual conduct on 2 more girls, yes, girls, on 2 other separate cases. The girls in question now are 20 and 11 respectively today, but both were under the age of 13 years old at the time the offenses occurred that we're charging. We are charging that one victim who is now 20 years old, that from April of 2012 to April of 2014, it's alleged that Defendant Bucks sexually assaulted the victim at a residence in Detroit. Further facts and evidence on that matter will be placed on the record at the preliminary examination. In that case, we charge Mr. Butts with criminal sexual conduct, 1 count in the first degree, person under 13, defendant 17 or older. In that case, we are also charging Mr. Butts with 3 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, person under 13, defendant 17 years or older. In the second criminal sexual conduct case, well, I guess the third, that we're charging today, we are alleging that the victim, who is now 13 years old, that from July 2015 through July 2017, we're alleging that he sexually assaulted residents in Detroit, and again, further facts and evidence will be developed at the preliminary examination. Defendant Butts have been charged with, in that case, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree. Child under the age of 13, Mr. Butts over the age of 17. Based on all the evidence that I've laid out now and much more that will be shown later in court, based on all these cases we will present in court, Mr. Butts targeted and befriended women who had to have sexual relationships with their young daughters. He would have relationships with their mothers, but his true desire was to have sex with their young daughters. That's what the evidence will show. He was a classic and expert groomer and pedophile. It's incredibly sad, incredibly unspeakable, and we want to bring justice to her and her family. I have to take this moment to say something to you, and this is not directed at all at Ziyah's family, who by all accounts had many in her family that truly loved her. This is directed to everyone else listening to me now. We must be very careful who we let into our hearts and our homes and our lives, especially if you have children. We must be very careful who we have around our children and elders respectively. We must also be very careful who we leave our children with, even if they are in a relationship partners, family, and friend. I'll say that again. Even if they are relationship partners, families, or friends. Life can be hard enough at times, but when it comes to our children, we must be deliberative, we must be diligent, and laser focused on their safety. And sometimes we must make decisions about them and their lives that we may not like and that they may not like, but is for the betterment of them and their safety and their future. When something doesn't feel right, even if it's just that voice in your head, it usually isn't right. And sometimes when we are attentive and we do everything right by our children, things can still happen and still go very wrong despite our best efforts. This can happen to good watchers of children. But we must always ask ourselves at the end of each and every day, was I right by each member of my household in terms of their safety? Did I do right by my children? Now, of course, Mr. Butts is presumed innocent unless and until he's found guilty on each and every crime and count that we have charged today. We have been told this morning that the arraignment will be tomorrow, we think at 10:30 a.m. in the morning, but we don't have confirmation of that yet. But the arraignment, we are told, will happen tomorrow morning.